recording of this session, so that if you're interested for future use, you can get a copy of the recording from us. Now, first, I have an introductory presentation. Will take us about 15 to 20 minutes. First, allow me to briefly introduce the company to you, for those of you who are not yet familiar with Produmex. Produmex is a company that is headquartered in Belgium. We have approximately 50 employees worldwide, who are based in offices in Hungary, USA, and Canada, apart from the headquarters in Belgium. We are a global software solution partner for SAP Business One, providing certified add-ons for in the area of manufacturing, warehousing, and logistics. And we currently have more than 400 installations in 30 countries, with more than 60 partners. Now, we are also a member of the SAP Business One Product Advisory Council. So we're closely working together with SAP, and we are being informed about future evolutions of the product at an early stage. Now, Produmex is also part of a larger organization, namely Mobilitas Consulting, which is headquartered in Germany and has about 150 employees and works at 12 locations worldwide. They offer industry-focused solutions based on the SAP ECC, SAP Business Suite solution of SAP. And then through our parent company Mobilitas Consulting, we've also got a sister company, Peak-Wisex, which is within our group of companies the hardware and technology supplier for supply chain operations. And Peak-Wisex has approximately 550 employees across North America and the UK. So this is a brief introduction about our company. Now, the next thing I would like to show you is the agenda that I have prepared for you. I do not know to what extent you are familiar with GS1, and therefore I think it's very important that we're on the same page. So I have prepared a brief introduction about a number of main features and functions of GS1, which I want to run through with you before I then show you in a demonstration how we use these standards in our solution for SAP Business One. Okay, now as far as GS1 is concerned, GS1 is an organization that has grown from an initiative that started in the USA, where in 1973 there was a barcode standard that was established in the USA, which was called UPC, so the Unified Product Code. And it was about a year later, in April 1974, that the first barcoded product, a packet of chewing gum, was scanned in a US supermarket. And so we're talking about an evolution that has started some 44 years ago now. Now, on the other side of the Atlantic, in Europe, in 1977, we had the establishment of the EAN Association, so the European Article Numbering Association in Brussels, in Belgium. And in the years to follow, these organizations started, so the US, so the North American organization and the European organization started collaborating on an international scale, forming the International Article Number Organization, which eventually merged to one global organization in 2005, when the GS1 organization, so which is short for One Global Standard, was founded. At this moment, GS1 has a presence in over 100 countries and has more than 1 million members, so companies that use the standards. And these standards have evolved in many areas over the years, from the original barcodes. They have now also evolved into other areas, like EDI, so electronic data interchange, healthcare, business to consumer communication, data bars, RFID, and so on. So the organization has evolved from an organization that was devoted to barcode standards now to an organization that offers full services when it comes to optimizing the supply and the value chain. Now, GS1 is a non-profit organization. That is important to know. So they work, or they get their operational funds from the memberships of the companies that use the standards. And this is the offering of GS1 in one picture, where you see that they have, of course, the standards in the area of the barcodes, where they have defined a way to uniquely identify products, uniquely identify also a number of elements in the supply chain. They have defined a standards for the electronic communication between supply chain partners based on a certain regulation and standards. They have also got a global data synchronization network standard, because if you want to exchange between supply chain partners information about the products that you trade with each other, you have to have a platform where you can easily exchange that information. That's the global data synchronization network. And then you've got also EPC Global, so the electronic product codification, which is an evolution of the last 10 years, where we have gone from, say, the two-dimensional barcodes to electronic product codification with the RFID tags and other evolutions that are on their way. So this is the portfolio of GS1. And now I want to devote a few minutes to a number of identification keys that are very important in this context, and that are also at the basis of what we do as a supplier of a warehouse management solution for SAP Business One. So the four major identification keys that GS1 has defined are, on the one hand, trade items, where they have the standard identification key, the GTIN, which is short for the Global Trade Item Number, which is a unique identification of a product throughout the world, uniquely identified based on certain parameters. Then you've got the identification of a logistic unit, which is the SSCC, or the Serial Shipping Container Code, a very important element also. Then you've also got an identification of locations, and the GLN, the Global Location Number. And you've got also an identification for the reusable product carriers, which they call assets, and that's the GRAI, the Global Returnable Asset Identifier. So these are the four important identification keys. And let me go over those and to explain why these standards have been defined. Now, a GTIN, a Global Trade Item Number, is to identify a trade item. So what can a trade item be? Well, that can be any trade item that you have in consumer for consumers in a retail business. So individual products, like we go to the supermarket and we buy something, and when these products are scanned, then actually the people at the checkout desk are scanning the global trade item number of these products. Now, it can also be a standard grouping of trade items. It doesn't have to be individual products, so you can have one item, but you can also have a six-pack of an item, or you can have a carton of a specific item. And it can be possible that, for instance, a wholesaler does not trade in individual items with his customers, but that he trades with these items in the form of cartons of these items, or pallets of these items. So at that moment, a pallet of a specific product or a carton of a specific product can be a trade item as well. And as a matter of fact, every other item that you want to trade between organizations, whether it be raw materials, building materials, medical devices, if you want to give them a unique identification, you can apply, or you can associate a global trade item number with it. Now, how does such a global trade item number, how is it formed? Well, it consists of three parts. On the one hand, there is always the GS1 company prefix. So it is a product is uniquely identified and associated with the product that either produces it or distributes it. And so what you always have in the number structure of a global trade item number is that you have a company prefix, which can have variable lengths and which can starts with the country code of where the manufacturer or the distributor is located, and then it has a range of article numbers. So it depends upon the range of products that you have as a producer or as a retailer or as a distributor, whether you have a large range of articles or a shorter range. And then there's also a control figure that is to verify that the global trade item number or the barcode that is associated with the product is also authentic. So what you see here is indeed then a product with its global trade item number in barcoded format. And in this case, it is a product that is based on its country code coming from Singapore. Okay. Now, the next important aspect in identifying or in identification keys in GS1 terms is the identification of logistic units. So you're not going to trade as a supply chain partner individual products, but you're going to create logistic units that are composed for transport and storage, and these logistic units have to be managed throughout the supply chain. And the identification key that the GS1 has defined for this purpose is the SECC, the Serial Shipping Container Code, and which is also informally referred to as the license plate. So it is, again, it is a unique identification of a logistic unit which is used to track and trace the products that are contained in that logistic unit. The number structure of the SECC is equal to or similar to that of a global trade item number. So again, you have a company prefix, and then you have a range number, and this range number is now not associated with the variety of products that you have, but it is based on the variety of logistic units that you manage. So the higher the number of logistic units you have to manage in your supply chain, the higher or the larger the range number will be, and the shorter the company prefix. You purchase, as a member of GS1, you purchase this range from GS1, and purchasing this range associated with your company prefix gives you the right to generate the number of series of the numbers for that amount of logistic units which you can generate. Okay. Now, assigning an SECC is something which is done at a certain stage in the process of packaging or producing or distributing these logistic units, and depending on that, there are various organizations that can assign the SECC. It can be the manufacturer. So, for instance, if Coca-Cola manufactures pallets of Coca-Cola, so they will then create the SECCs or the license plates for these logistic units. It can also be the wholesaler or the logistics provider, so the people that transform these products or these logistic units into other logistic units, or the distributor. This is a key element, the SECC, for traceability, because based on this identification of logistic units, it allows you to find traceability data about productions batches that have been created and have been registered in database. And it allows to establish the link between the physical goods flow, so the goods receipt, the storage, the picking, the shipping, and the deliveries. And so that physical goods flow can then also be associated with the information flow, the electronic information flow that is going alongside this physical goods flow. So where you as a supplier inform your customer electronically of the products that you are going to ship to him and the logistic units that he will receive in that context. Then we have two other identifications which are not that important, but they exist and they have their use in the supply chain. So there is on the one hand the GLN, which is the global location number, and that is the identification of a company as a legal entity or a physical location or a functional entity in a company. So if you have a company with various sites in a specific country, each of these sites can have a global location number, and this is also then important if you want to trace back, say, specific batches of a product to a specific site within a company. The same applies also for the assets. So in logistics, there's an enormous amount of reusable assets that is going across the world. So pallets, crates, containers, these represent a significant value also. People also want to manage this. Companies want to manage this. They want to know from who they have received specific assets, and also to whom they have sent them, and therefore GS1 has also created an identification key for that purpose, which is the Global Returnable Asset Identifier. So this is a short survey of the identification key, so the trade item, the logistic unit, the location, and the assets. And then you have to, say, merge all this information in barcodes, because based on the barcodes, you want to electronically identify and register these products. So in that context, GS1 has also defined a barcode structure, which is called the GS1 128 barcode, and this means, so 128 means that it is capable of, or that it can contain at the maximum 128 characters, because that's also the maximum range that a barcode scanner can recognize in a two-dimensional barcode. And what you do in this barcode is that you concatenate information in it based on also a standard, namely the standard of application identifiers. Now, let me show you such a typical barcode, so GS1 128 barcode. So you see here a barcode with underneath it also a number of figures and letters, and you see that there is between brackets that there is a number of interrupts in that barcode or in that range of figures. Now these figures between brackets, that is what they call the application identifiers, and the application identifiers have been standardized also to allow scanners to recognize and to link a specific element of information to a specific meaningful information. So in this case, 02 identifies that this is the global trade item number of the product in the packaged unit. So when a scanner scans this barcode, he will, on the basis of this application identifier, already immediately recognize the product. 37 is the identification of the count, so the number of products that are contained in this unit. 15 is the identification of the best before date, and 10 is the identification of the batch number. So based on scanning this barcode, the scanner will be able to interpret these information and link them to a database in which they are stored in the right tables. Now, here are some of the most important application identifiers. So 00 is the identification of the SECC. 02 is that of a global trade item number of a packaged unit. 10 is the batch number. 15 is the best before date. 310X is the net weight in kilograms. 410 is the ship to address. But on the whole, there are more than 100 application identifiers that have been defined by GS1, and through the link below you can access a document where you can find the complete overview of all these application identifiers. Okay, so now we have defined that we can create barcodes in a specific format, and now we're going to put these barcodes on what we call a GS1 logistic label, because that is the label that is attached to the logistic unit, and that will be used in processing this logistic unit between, say, the supplier and the customer. So GS1 has defined a number of rules and conventions for this. It defines which data can be put on the label, how it should be structured, what is the relation between barcodes and text, and also a number of parameters as the size and the location where the label has to be attached to the logistic unit. Now, in this context, it's also important to understand that there are various types of logistic units. We talk about standardized, uniform or mono pallets, which you say, okay, you have a specific standard pallet layout of this a pallet containing only one product, which is a mono pallet. You can have a non-standardized mono pallet, so it contains only the same product, but not in the normal pallet layout. And then you can also have what they call a mixed pallet, where you have a mixture of different products that are arranged on a particular pallet or logistic carrier. And then, okay, so what GS1 does in this context is that they define, okay, what can you put on such a label? So the one thing that is mandatory on the label is the SECC, because the SECC provides the link between the actual logistic unit and its contents. So through this SECC, you can also find back what have we put on this logistic unit. But you can also put optional data on there. So if you have mono pallets, you can add additional information on it, like the identification of the trade items in the logistic units and their characteristics, like the date, the batch, the quantity, the weight, the logistic dimensions, the number of the shipment, ship to address, ship for address, and so you can add some additional information to it. And when you are talking about mixed pallets, the only mandatory data is the SECC, because if you have a mixed pallet, you cannot GS1 has decided that in a mixed pallet you should not have all the barcodes of all the products that are on that pallet, because then you could have a mix-up. And so, but the SECC is there again, the key to knowing which information is on there. So this is the structure of the GS1 label. You have a part of it that contains free information. Then you have a middle part where you have information in human readable form of the barcoded data. And then you have the GS1 128 barcode on the hand with, say, the SECC, which is at the bottom, and on the other hand, the identification of the items on the pallet in case of a mono pallet. Now, just before we start with the demonstration, I want to inform you that how does GS1 support traceability in this context? Well, it has defined a number of identification keys for it, which I have explained. And on the other hand, it has also defined a number of data carriers. So, and with that, with those identification keys and data carriers, they can manage to streamline the whole supply chain and realize the complete traceability of it. Now, if you start at a agricultural producer, of course, as you know, most farmers don't have the capability to identify their products, to generate barcodes for it, or there are sort of generic products. So GTIN is an option there. But what we can do to identify a producer is that we have his global location number. So by knowing that this producer has delivered this batch of potatoes, for instance, we can trace back eventually to him. Now, if you go then to the manufacturing cycle, there, of course, you have the full use of all of the standards, so the global trade item numbers, the SECCs, the global location numbers, the same in the transport area, in the distributor and retailer area. And when it comes eventually to the sale to the consumer, there we have the GTIN, which is the final identification key that we use to streamline the supply chain. And in the area of the data carriers, and there are the GS1 128 codes. There is also ITF 14, which is a standard used for cartons, so for interleaved 2 of 14. You've got RFID possibilities, you've got data bar, data matrices. So GS1 has an evolving range of data carriers that they can offer to contain the information about these global trade items, SECCs and GLNs. Okay, so in this way, these standards are used throughout the supply chain, and then when it comes to, for instance, having to execute a product recall, then you have the mechanism of tracking and tracing that arises. Say, suppose that a consumer goes to his supermarket and says, well, I've got a problem, there's a problem with this product. Well, based on the return of that product, that global trade item number and the batch number that is on most of those, and now the hypermarket will know on which logistic unit he has received it, so he will be able to relate that to a license plate of a logistic unit. He will be able to communicate that to his carrier. The carrier can bring it to its the distribution center, communicate it. So you go down the line based on knowing I have here a specific item of a specific batch that was brought to me on a specific logistic unit, and I can trace back in the supply chain until I found the name or the cause of the problem. And at the moment that the cause of the problem is identified, I can start the forward communication, because of course it is possible that the product and of that particular batch has not only been delivered to this particular supermarket on a specific logistic unit, but it can also have been shipped to other partners or other customers in the supply chain, and on the basis of identifying this is the product that we need to recall, we can then define these are all the logistic units that have products of the same batch number that we have to bring back. So that is how this works when it comes to a product recall. So this was the theoretical part of the webinar. What I want to do now is show you how we have applied this in Produmex, how we have a number of GS1 settings in our solution, and then I will take you through the inbound and the outbound logistics process, and show you the traceability based on, say, the standards that I have just explained to you. Okay, so if we now end this, and I turn to my system. So what you see here is that I have the two aspects of our solution. So on the one hand, we have the administrative module of Produmex, which runs in the SAP Business One environment, and we have here the RF terminal on which we execute the actions in the warehouse. Now, first and foremost of the settings in the organizational structure is, so in the organizational structure, we define the layout of our warehouse. We can define the different zones, we can define the different aisles in our warehouse, and so on. So this is a very flexible tool to define the warehouse layout and also the behavior of it. So for instance, I have here a freezer zone where I can say, okay, this is only used for storing frozen product, and I can associate that zone type with a specific product. So this is a very flexible tool. On another occasion we can go into detail here, but in this particular case, when it comes to the GS1 support, there is a few things I want to show you. Here, for instance, we have the SECC, so where you can define on a company basis, you can define your range of SECC numbers that you are entitled to. So the range of numbers that you have purchased from GS1 can be defined here so that you can use it in practice, and we will be using this range throughout the demonstration. What we can also define is a number of reports, and on these reports we have defined a number of specific labels that are related to GS1, like a goods receipt label, for instance, a sales, an item label, or a shipping label. So labels that are compliant with the standards of GS1, and with these reports we can associate specific print events. So in this case, I have identified that upon the reception of a new logistic unit, I will print my report number 61, which is my goods receipt label, automatically. Also, if I tag a finished logistic unit, I will have a GS1 label that I print. If I produce a logistic unit, I will print automatically a label. So here you define a number of labels and reports that are related to the GS1 traceability identification standards and traceability capabilities. On the other hand, I have also the possibility to identify a number of parameters in my stock management. So if I take a particular product, so here I have a product, let me see, baked beans. So on that product I can define a number of standards or characteristics. So this is a batch managed product, so the system will require a batch number if we receive it. We can identify other parameters in it. For instance, we can define that this has also a best before date, and then that means that the system, when it will receive this product, will require a best before date, and it will register that also in the barcode of the logistic label that we will create. So we have a number of characteristics for the sales and the purchasing process of this product. We have here the purchase barcode type is of the format global trade item number, and here we have the global trade item number for this particular product, which is a global GTIN 14. We can also identify particular other aspects. Now in this case, that's not the case, but for instance, if you would say this is a product which has a variable weight, we could also identify that, and then the system would also require us to register a weight during the receipt of this product. I will show that in a minute also. I can also define a number of attributes that I want to capture so that I can associate particular attributes with a particular batch of a product. So that, for instance, if I have a product that comes from different producers, then I could say, okay, I want to register the global location number of those producers when I do the reception, and then I have that information available and I can use it to trace back to that particular batch of product. Or I can, for instance, define a country of origin or a receiving temperature or a shipping temperature. So it's completely free here to define batch attributes that you can associate with the receipt of a particular batch of a product. Also, when it comes to, for instance, if you have business partners that you want to also register the particular number of the logistic unit that they have, we have a specific setting here where you can specify that specific pallet number has to be identified. So that means that when you receive a product with on a pallet of that supplier, then the system will ask you to specify the unique identification code of this particular pallet. So you see that we have the support of the global trade item number, we have the support of the SECCs, we have the support of the global returnable assets, and we can also manage global location numbers. Now let me show you how this now works in practice. Just for your information still, I have defined my layout such that I have here in my warehouse, I have a number of receiving docks, so that I have specified on these receiving docks I will receive my goods, and then I will put them away into the warehouse. I have also got here a packing zone where I can do packing, pick and pack operations, which I will also show you. So I'm using these elements to streamline the operations in the warehouse. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a purchase order in SAP Business One. And on that purchase order, I will first select my supplier. I will select my product here, and I will select the quantity that I order for this particular product. Okay, so I have now added the purchase order. So the moment that it has been added in SAP Business One, and so it is created now in SAP Business One. The moment it is created, it is available on the scanner to be received. And so here on the scanner, we have the flows that we support. So this can be configured depending upon the authorizations or the area in which a specific operator works. But here you see all the main flows, which is the inbound logistics flow. So from purchasing to goods receipt and put away, the outbound logistics, so sales, picking and shipping, the internal logistics process, the moves, and we have also a link to production. Now, if we go to purchase, we're going to do a goods reception now. I now define the dock where I will be receiving my product, so I'll receive it on my receiving dock 1. And then the system asks me to select a filter. Now, the most automated one is that you go through the GS1 EAN barcode, which means that if you select that, the system will ask you to scan the barcodes that are on the logistic unit, and it will match that with the information that the supplier has sent and automate in 2 scans, and it will automate the whole receiving process. Now I haven't got a scanner connected here, an actual scanner connected here, so I can go through the order. I can also, if I don't have a reference to the PO, I still can do the reception, or I can also receive a container, so various purchase orders in a container. So I'm going through the order. So here is my PO. I'm receiving it. Now the system asks me, am I going to receive identical logistic units or no identical logistic units? If I would have ordered 5 pallets of this product of the same batch, then I could just say, okay, it's 5 logistic units, and it would speed up the process of receiving those. Now in this case, it's a single pallet. So again, always scanning the barcodes prevails. So again, he asked me scan the barcodes of the GS1 label. there is no label on it. I will now create the label step by step, but as you understand, if we do this in an automated way with already labels attached to the logistic units, it's just a matter of scanning. So here I can select my logistic carrier. If I want to track the logistic carriers, it's a Euro pallet. Scan the product or select the product, so he knows this is the product that is contained within this in this purchase order. He knows it has a batch number. Again, if the batch number would already be contained in the barcode, the system would have recognized that immediately. He has a best before date. I have specified it's a standard best before date for this product, and I specify the quantity. And at this moment, the system will do the goods receipt, and it will, at the same time, also generate a goods receipt label. Okay, let me clear on. Yeah, there it is. So what you see here now, is the goods receipt label compliant with GS1, and what you see here is that indeed we have here the information about what is in this logistic unit based on the global trade item number, the quantity, the best before date, the batch number, reception date. And what you see here is that we have created now a new logistic unit which has got this number, so a unique identification number. And on the other hand, we have here the barcode, which with the application identifiers that contains here the 02 for the global trade item number, the 15 for the best before date, 37 for the count. So 50 trays of with 24 jars, it's 1200. So my jar is my unit of my inventory unit of measure, and here is the batch number. So at this stage, I have really identified all this information and captured it in a GS1 label. The moment that this is done, so if we now go to, just let me close this, yes. If we now go to a goods receipt, and we ask for the last goods receipt, you see here that in SAP Business One, automatically this goods receipt has been stored along with the SECC number and the quality status code and the batch number and the best before date. So everything has been received in SAP Business One, and as we manage this, just a moment, as we manage this in our own bin locations, we also have an inventory report. And in that inventory report, I can check where my stock is located at a particular moment in time. Okay, yes. So here you see my baked beans, and you see here that where it is located, on my receiving dock, with all the identification parameters. Now, at this moment, the system has automatically generated a put away order. So if I go back to my terminal and ask for put away, and I say I want to see what I have to put away from my receiving dock 1, he will show me now the SECC that is on that receiving dock, and which I can now scan in order to indicate I'm going to put away this logistic unit. So let me simulate that. So I scan the SECC number. No, that's not the right one. It's this one here. Okay. Yes, that's the number. So I scan the number. He then asked me, okay, where do you want to bring it to? So I can ask him so he suggests a default location. I can select another location, or I can also ask the system to suggest an empty location. If I do that, and I say, okay, I want to move it into that location, it is moved. And at the same moment, at the administrative level, you will see now that indeed my inventory report is updated and that it is registered at this new location. So at that moment you see that it is very easy to follow and to trace where all my logistic units of which best before dates and which batches are located in my warehouse. Okay, so this is the inbound logistics process. Let me show you now how we manage this in the outbound logistics process. So if we now go to sales and we create a sales order. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select our customer here. And what we're going to do is now we're going to sell him two different products. We're going to sell him baked beans, say 2 trays of that, and we will also sell him chickpeas, 2 trays of those. Okay, and I'm specifying the delivery date of today. Okay, I've got my sales order now. Now a sales order is not released immediately for picking on the shop floor. That works in a 2-stage approach. What we do now normally, so there are various ways of organizing it. There are customers who have a pick list robot running each night, for instance, but you can also do it manually. So let me show that to you. I'm going to create a pick list proposal now. The system is not really responsive. Yes, okay. Okay, yeah, okay, I've got my pick list proposal here, and so what it does now, it will look whether it's possible to reserve the quantity for the ordered quantity, and it will also tell me, okay, I have sufficient quantity available, and it will also tell me this is the batch that you will have to pick from. So it will use the FIFO, so the first expired, first out principles, to determine these are the batches that you will need to pick from in order to fulfill this order. So I can also select here the shipping dock, via which I'm going to ship it, and then I can generate a pick list. Okay, this is my pick list. It's an electronic pick list which I can also print if that would be required, but normally you do this all in an electronic way. So I have now created my pick list, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pick this order. So I'm going back now and I'm going to the sales process, where you see that we have a number of picking strategies. So individual picking, picking of multiple orders at the same time, zone picking, so picking products by the zone in which they are stored, so that you don't pick the refrigerated products at the same time as the ambient products, or also customer collect picking. So I go to picking now. I select my pick list, and the system will now instruct me which items I have to pick. So I have to go to this location where I will have to pick 2 trays of this product, and I will have to go to this location where I will have to pick 2 trays of that other product of this batch. So if I now start the picking process, I'm going to show you how I do it with picking and packing. So I'm selecting what we call a movable location or a picking card. Okay, then I go to my location, and then normally I scan the product. So again, based on scanning the product and its batch number, the system will acknowledge that this is the right one, or I can also select it. So this is my product that I need to select, and here are the batches that he shows me. So he will allow me only to pick from the batch that he has chosen. So if I go back, select the product, and I try picking from another batch, he will tell me that I cannot pick from this batch number and best before date. So he will enforce the batch that he has provided to me. So this is the one. These are now picked. Now he tells me, okay, you need to go to the next location. Where I select the product again. Again, 2 different batches. This is the one I need to take. And the items are picked now. So if I now look into my inventory report, So I select now, oh sorry, I select now not my product, but I select my location. Okay, he will now show me that indeed on my picking card I have got two trays or 48 jars of these of both products. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do the packing of this, and for this we have another application. So we also have a packing thin client. So I go now to the packing stage. I select my packing line that I have defined. I specify my card. I specify the logistic carrier. And now I can start packing. Now in this case, he has also shown me that an image of the picture. So what I can do now is I can decide whether I'm going to pack these products on one logistic unit or whether I would intend to create different logistic units. And so I could at this stage decide I'm going to create two separate logistic units. So let me do that. So let me oh, okay, yes, let me say that I'm going to add this item. Yes, I've got now one logistic unit that I can finish. Okay, and what you will see now is that he will create a new label for that. So I have now created a new logistic unit. Yes, okay, so here it is. So again, this is a mono pallet, so it only contains one product, and in that context it says you mention the SECC, but you can also mention the product details of the product that's on there. So this is another logistic unit. Now let me now say that I'm going to, yes, add all items. So he tells me, okay, I have already a logistic unit to pack on, but in this case I want to show you that I can start a new logistic unit. And what I'm now creating is a mixed pallet. So a pallet with two different products on there. And what you see in this case, that effectively the label that we create only contains, in this case, the identification of the logistic unit, so the SECC. And that is in line with the GS1 regulations, because they say for mixed pallets we know what's on there. So we know that this pallet, we can trace it back to this one tray of baked beans and these two trays of chickpeas of this particular batch. Okay. So the products are now at my shipping dock, and if I then go to my shipping stage, I go to my shipping dock 1, I say for my pick list, so this is the pick list that I've picked for, and indeed for this pick list I have now two logistic units that I have to ship, so I can now ship both of them. So this one and the other one. Okay, the system is now adding the sales delivery note in SAP Business One, and it's also creating now the sales delivery note that we have defined as a template. Yes, okay, there is the sales delivery note that we have associated to this particular print event. So if we go back to our sales and look at the delivery and ask for the last delivery, you will see here that it has registered all aspects that are in the delivery, and it's also that it is sent on two different SSCCs. So the system has recorded all that information. And well, to finish off the webinar, what I want to show you finally is then the traceability reporting that we have on this. So if we go to traceability report for a particular item, so let me take my baked beans and a forward traceability report, then we will see all batches of this product that we have processed in our warehouse. So you see here all the batches that we have processed, and for each of these batches we can find the goods receipt. So here you have the goods receipt of this batch, and it is also again traced back on which SECC we have received this product. We can ask the delivery, so this has gone out, and it has gone out on the same SECC, and particularly we can have all movements of this particular batch of product quality status changes. So in this case we have had the quality status change. So everything is documented in this report. And now if we would look at our latest, say here for instance for this batch, the deliveries, I'm looking for the batch that we just processed. Yes, so here we have 2 sales delivery notes, and you see that this batch has gone out on 2, and this is the batch that we have just created, and here it is registered that this batch has gone out on 2 different SECCs. So in case of a product recall, and we would get the feedback from one customer that he had received it on this SECC, we could immediately associate it, the same product, with that SECC, and we would be sure this is also an SECC that we need to recall. So this is the way this works. It does not only work in a forward but also in a backward way. So if you have production, there you can also have that the backward traceability of, so this is my final product. So this is my final product. I have my deliveries and my movements of this product, and I also have the components that have gone into this. For each of the components I know when I have received them, and so I also have here for each of the components now when I have received them, on which SECC, and so forth. So here I have even a product where I have an intermediate product, so I can really drill down into this structure to the very lowest level to have a complete traceability report of everything that has gone in and has gone out, and on which logistic unit it has arrived in the warehouse. So that concludes the webinar. I don't know whether you have questions at this stage. If you have, I can give you the word. So if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. It's also possible, if you don't have questions at this moment, I am available, so you can send a direct question to me. Also, if you would be interested in receiving the recording of this webinar, I will be happy to share that with you. Okay, then I thank you for your attention, and I hope it was an informative session for you. Any questions?
I had some bags at all because I just didn't fit in the seat, and I had quite a few absolutely humiliating experiences trying the tester seat, which was in front of the ride, and then a whole queue.
Oh, she is unfortunately she's dropped out. Okay, so you'll have to take that. Okay, so I will end the session right now. So I thank you for your attention. If you have additional questions, please let me know, and I will be glad to answer them. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.